All right, it's been requested that we have a little bit of It's Me again. So 960. I've had a number of folks make this request over the last few weeks. So I'm not going to open up the book. You really don't need it. But if you do, 960. So we're going to sing a few verses, and then I'm going to point out to the crowd and let some of you come up with a verse of a song. How often have you been a songwriter before?
I've never been.
You've never been. All right, Curtis. Well, tonight you be thinking one up, okay? Okay, I guess you will. Curtis is going to get the first one. So you got 3 verses, then it's you. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my brother or my sister, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my brother or my sister, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my neighbor or stranger, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my neighbor or stranger, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my son or his girlfriend, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my son or his girlfriend, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It can be anything, Curtis. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not Curtis or Alan, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not Curtis or Alan, but it's me, oh Lord. You got one? Standing in the need of prayer. It's me, you got one, 2, 3. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. But it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my mama, not my dad. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. From it. It's not Chuck, it's not Kenny, but it's me, oh Lord. It may be though, standing in the need of prayer. Not Chuck, not Kenny, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in. Last one, prayer. Okay, not the fireman, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not the mailman, not the fireman, but it's me, oh good one, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. What a humble song, isn't that great? All right. That's okay, Curtis. You be thinking about it for next time. Yeah. You can pick on Chuck again if you want.
Okay.
All right. Well, we are taking a little reprieve tonight from our study of Joshua because of our leadership weekend. And I thought, what better way to close out this weekend than looking at a passage that encompasses in all of Scripture the most rich, commonly used metaphor. This morning we talked about how Paul will constantly use that idea of being a father, parenting in leadership. But if you look all the way through the breadth of Scripture, you're going to see the concept of shepherding being the mode of leadership that's powerfully communicated in passage after passage. And no text in all the Bible is better known or communicates better the powerful leadership of a shepherd to those he shepherds, to his sheep, than that well-known and beloved text in Psalm 23. Psalm 23. You know, we live in a time with great need of leadership in the church, particularly. We have so much leadership discussed today. You can get on YouTube and type in TED Talk leadership, and you're going to see so many, and some of it's very rich and very good, but you'll see folks who make their living talking about leadership. People who have written books and gotten rich telling people how to become better leaders. And it's remarkable that we live in a world with so much information about leadership and so few leaders. Have you marveled at that, Bob? So much information about leadership, but so few leaders. And I wonder why that is. Well, it's interesting because I read in S.I. McMillan's classic book, None of These Diseases. He told a story of a young lady who was applying to be accepted into an elite college, an Ivy League institution. And one of the questions on the examination was, do you consider yourself to be a leader? Yes or no? And she really struggled with that question, being an honest girl in her heart, but so wanting to be accepted by the institution. Finally, she let out a sigh and she checked no. To her surprise, she received a letter in the mail 3 or 4 weeks later, and it said, "Congratulations, you've been accepted. Upon reviewing your application, we've decided that in our incoming freshman class, we have 1,452 leaders, and we needed someone to follow them." And it's interesting, but that's what it is. People talk about leadership. People consider themselves to be leaders. In the church, I don't think most people would say, no, I'm just a follower. No, I'm trying to be a leader. But when it comes to actual leadership, there's so very little of it. In 1992, is the last, Bob's probably got much more up-to-date statistical information on the church. But in 1992 was the last survey I saw that addressed some of these issues. And all those decades ago, 50% of our congregations in the churches of Christ didn't have biblical leadership. 50%. And that really isn't surprising because of the fact that, you know, many of our congregations, you realize that at Waterford, we're in the top 5% of churches of Christ as far as our size. I mean, we have 350, 400 members, and we don't think of ourselves. Do you think of us as a really big church? You don't. But we're still in the top 5% because the vast majority of churches of Christ are under 100 members. And half of them, at least then, maybe, has it gotten any better, Bob? I would guess not. In 1992, only half of them had elderships. Only half. So can you imagine, of all the flocks of sheep in the world, if only 50% of them had shepherds? Can you even imagine that? The reason that would be especially problematic is something, again, we may not want to admit. Just like this morning, we said none of us really want to be children or admit we're children. Well, we may see this imagery of shepherding all the way through the Old and New Testament, but the reality is, who wants to admit they're a sheep? God calls us that. The scriptures are plain that that's what we are, but who wants to admit they're sheep? Because I'm telling you, sheep are the absolute, no offense to any individual or any person, this is talking about us corporately, but sheep are the absolute dumbest creatures on the face of the earth. Did you know that? They can't do anything for themselves. Now, they are docile, sweet creatures that have great productivity. I mean, this suit I'm wearing is because of a sheep. Or is it a sheep or sheep? It's kind of like moose. They're not meese, they're moose. But goose is geese. I don't get all that. But, you know, when you look at the fact that they produce so much, and they provide food, and they provide clothing, and they provide so many different things, but they have to have a shepherd. Domesticated sheep wouldn't exist anymore if people stopped shepherding them, because they have no means of defending themselves. They have no means of providing for themselves. And they make the most destructive decisions when left to themselves. Yet, if we are to be led by a shepherd, and in the earthly sense, by shepherds, and this analogy is to hold true, then 50% of all the flocks of God's sheep of the churches of Christ in the United States are roaming around without any shepherds. And that's a problem. Because sheep need a shepherd. They need shepherds. So as we look at this text, the most familiar of all, perhaps in the entire Bible, maybe John 3:16 would compete. We see a beautiful picture of what leadership is from the image of a shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. The first thing it tells us about shepherding type of leadership is it's leadership that provides a source of security and provision. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. A good shepherd understands that it is absolutely, unquestionably his duty to provide everything the sheep need. Not a portion. Not, I'm punching it. There are no shepherds who punch time clocks and see as, well, I'm a shepherd from 8 to 5, but then somebody else takes over and now it's their responsibility. No. He understands it in an intimate level that he is the shepherd of these sheep. That he is their provider. He is their source of provision and all good things. And it's his duty. It is his responsibility. And if something happens to those sheep, it's his fault. He gets that. He has accepted that. When he chose to be a shepherd, he accepted that responsibility. You see, 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8, there's several little texts that I think are helpful in this. 1 Timothy 5, 8, it says, but if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, he is denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Now we know that text, but when you apply it to this idea of a shepherd, you understand that the church of our Lord, that flock, to God the shepherd, and then to those he's entrusted it with in this world, that is a family. And just as I as a father have a responsibility to those in my home, and you as a father and a mother have a responsibility to your children, so a shepherd takes on that responsibility, that duty to those he leads. It's a responsibility. It's a something that should be constantly present in his heart as his purpose, as his duty. And so this describes one who, as it says, causes them to lie down in green pastures, leads them beside the still waters. I like in Genesis chapter 50, verses 18 through 21, there's a text there where at the very end of the book of Genesis, you'll remember that Joseph had went through all that he had with his brothers, his family. He's went off to Egypt. He's become a slave. He's went to prison. Now he's been elevated to the second most influential, powerful man in all the world. And his brothers, there's the whole circumstance where his brothers are brought before him. And when they find out it's him, they're afraid what he'll do. But the text tells us in verse 18 and following that his brothers also went and fell down before his face. And they said, behold, you're my servants. And Joseph said to them, don't be afraid, for I am in the place of God. But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring about it this day to save many people. Now therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. They were his family. So he understood his responsibility to provide, to care for, to love. Even though he says, you've done me wrong. And that's the reality of, the sheep sometimes don't think about what's good for the shepherd. I've seen that even in the church. Sometimes shepherds, they're what they need, the encouragement that they should be given, the honor they should be given, is the last thing on the mind of the sheep. But a good shepherd still does what's good for the sheep anyway, because it's his responsibility on his heart to provide for what it is that they need. History tells us what it was like for a Old Testament shepherd. You see, he got up every morning at 4 o'clock a.m. and he took the sheep out to pasture. And in the heat of the afternoon, he leads them to the green pastures so that they can chew the cud. Now, this makes them thirsty, but it's not the right time. The waters aren't still. So he waits, and then when the right time comes, regardless of what they want, because sheep don't typically vote, the shepherd takes them and gives them what they need beside the still waters. You see, he takes it as his personal responsibility, their security and their provision. The still waters refresh them, and it's a leader's duty to concern himself immediately with the growth and the needs of those he leads. So it's a beautiful picture that he starts off with here. Then verse 3, he restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Now, this one's my favorite of all that are listed in this text, because I just love the idea of a shepherd, of a leader who is impassioned by restoration. He restores my soul. What does it mean to restore something? When you think of restoration, we're the restoration movement. And then that whole idea is different than the Reformation, which was to change or improve. Restore means to go back to the original, because in the heart of a restorationist, there's nothing better than the original. We got a whole bunch of car people in this church, right? I mean, you guys love cars. You work in cars. You wouldn't eat if it wasn't for cars, most of you. And if you know, there's something about a new Corvette. Anybody work on Corvettes? No, that's down in Kentucky, right? But maybe some of you design some. Who does? You work on Corvettes? Okay, they're nice. They're nice, but they're not a 63 split window. You know, if you could offer me a new one or a 63 split window, who's going to take the new one over the split window? Okay, all you guys work for the car companies. I mean, you just want to keep your paychecks coming. But I mean, you understand? Who would take the 63 split window? Who's with me? More hands, guys. Sorry, Paul. We got guys with a lot of good opinions in here. But you look at that, and the heart of a restorer is that, no matter how much it's improved, how much smoother ride it has, how much more horsepower, it's just not like the old one, the original, And a restorer, what's interesting about car restorers? They're not interested in, you see some kids who have an old muscle car and they soup them up, and they have hood scoops on them and they put the fancy rims on. But that's not, that person's not a restorer. Because a restorer is not interested in souping it up. That's a reformer. Right? You know what a restorer is interested in doing? Making it like it used to be. That's a restorer. Taking it back to the original. And so it says here that as a shepherd, he restores my soul. And that's why one of the things I most appreciate about the heart, the emotion of our God. Our God in his heart, in his soul of souls, if he had a hobby, I think he has a special place in his heart for those guys who fix up old cars, because God isn't interested in fixing up old cars, but he is interested in fixing up old people. Right? He is interested in taking souls that have been corrupted with rust and decay and years of time and weather, and taking and bringing them back to their original. For don't you know that as many of you as were baptized into Christ, We're baptized into his death, and having been buried with him through baptism into death, we rise to walk in what? Newness. Newness of life. Jesus would say to Nicodemus, lest a man be born again, he cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, should I enter in again to my mother's womb and be born? No, no, no. Lest a man be born of the water and the Spirit. Born again. Restored. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, that draws me so near to my shepherd that he wants to make me just like new again. And that's the heart of this shepherd. He restores my soul. He restores us to make new again. It's a parallel with the great restorers in other areas of life as well. Several years ago, in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, a man, a vandal, ran in past security and took a knife to Rembrandt's famous Night Watch painting. And before he was tackled to the floor, he managed to cut it 4 or 5 times. And then not long after that, a year or two after that point, in Rome at St. Peter's Basilica, a man ran through with a hammer and went up to Michelangelo's sculpture of the Pietà. And he broke pieces of it to the ground before he could be stopped. Now, what's interesting is if you go to the Amsterdam Museum or if you go to St. Peter's, you'll be able to see Night Watch and you'll be able to see the original Pietà. Because what they did not do is they didn't throw them away because they were damaged. Because something of great value, you don't just discard it, you restore it. So both of those institutions brought in the greatest masters in the world to take masterpieces and restore them to how they were. That's the heart of our God, and that's the heart of a leader. And right here, our shepherds right here, what they want for you is the best you, the original you, the you that God always intended you to be. And that's what shepherds do, is they work tirelessly for the restoration of the sheep that they lead. The third thing we see, is in verse 4. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and the staff, they comfort me. Not only is a leader, a shepherd, a source of security, provision, and of restoration, he is a source of protection. This one is most clearly communicated in the New Testament in regard to the role of an elder. The primary role of a shepherd in the Lord's church is not to make decisions about whether we build a new building or we don't. Now, that is part of their role, but that is not their primary role. It is not to visit the members when they're sick. Now, that's part of their role. When people are sick, they're supposed to call the elders and be prayed on, and there's some discussion of oil and all that in the New Testament, but that's not the primary role of a shepherd. You know what the primary role of a shepherd is? Guard dog. The primary role of a shepherd, according to Paul's instruction to the Ephesian elders, is to watch. To what? They are to watch. To be on guard. And so this is very, very important because the reality is sheep are very tasty to predators because they're easy prey and they don't exercise much. So they're tender. And so every wolf and every mountain lion and every bear and everything out there wants to get the sheep. And the only protection they have, sheep have really no teeth. Sheep have no claws. And sheep are slow. They are, you're right. The only thing sheep have is a shepherd. But just like with those sheep that were shepherded by David, that's more than enough. Right? It says here that the rod and the staff, they comfort them. Now that is an interesting dynamic. Because the rod and the staff, why has he mentioned two? You know the difference between the two? The rod was a short, squat club. And the staff was a long, crooked staff with a hook on the end. The rod is what the shepherd used when the wolf would come near. That short, squat club, that skull cracker came out. But that was never used on the sheep. Never. And the staff was never used on the wolf. It was always used for the sheep. You see, when the wolf would come, or the bear, the staff and the sling, the rod and the sling, those would be the defense. But when the sheep would wander off the path, then they were hooked around the neck with the staff and brought back. So what he tells us is, he says, the Lord my shepherd, he protects me from the wolves and the bears and the lions, and he protects me from myself. He protects me from them, and he protects me from me. His rod and his staff, they comfort me. And isn't that what shepherds in the kingdom do? They protect us from, I have every confidence that the shepherds here protect you from the wrong thing being said from that pulpit, this platform. They protect you from the wrong thing being taught in your classes. They protect you from anyone in the membership that would sow discord. And they'll protect you from you. If you're wandering off the path, it's not a skull cracking that you'll receive. No, you'll receive a crook of a staff to lead you back, to protect you from you. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. And then verse 5 and 6. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Not only does shepherding provide security and provision and restoration, provide protection, it provides blessings. The tableland was a plateau or a field that had been cleared of the brush and the brambles and the thorns and all of those things that could hinder and harm the sheep. So the shepherd had been diligent beforehand to smooth the way for the benefit of those that he led. He led the way. The oil that he talks about here heals cuts and bruises. And we see that two people came forward this morning, one in late service, one in early service. And every one of them, as will always be true when you need, and it'll probably be true in all of our lives, at some point something's going to hit us in our lives and we're going to need support. And you may come right up here on the front, and I'll tell you what's going to happen when you do. You're going to be surrounded by shepherds who are going to pour out the oil to help you heal. Not physical oil, don't dress for the occasion, okay? But they're going to, in a spiritual sense, they're going to anoint your head with oil so you can heal. And they'll pray with you, and they'll meet with you, and they'll counsel with you, and they'll study with you, and they'll be there for you. Because that's what a shepherd does, to bring blessing to his sheep. Now, I say this with a heart that's full and in absolute honesty before God. We are blessed here. We have 5 shepherds who every one of them are a shepherd. And they're going to lead you and care for you. And I feel blessed to be shepherded by them. Next Sunday is my 1-year anniversary of being the preacher here at Waterford. And I hope that at the end of this weekend of leadership, One of the things that you take from it is appreciation to our God that we have leadership here. And we have men who shepherd us. And I hope that you young men realize that shepherding, it's a responsibility. Let's make it very clear. It's not easy. Let's make it very, very even clearer for you. There will be nights. Is that true, Don, Dave? I mean, there will be nights you'll be up late. And you'll have people's burdens on your heart, and you'll pray that you gave them the right advice. But here's the thing. You're given the opportunity to be a blessing to people in their lives, because when you need them, there's nothing that will substitute for a good shepherd. So think about it for the future in your life. What an ambition in life to shepherd the sheep of God. Tonight, if you're subject to an invitation, if there's anything in your life you need, here's the thing. You're going to be surrounded by shepherds if you come. And it won't bother them at all. If you all come and we're here another hour, Chipotle will be open then too. It's all right. Come and you'll be surrounded and you'll be shepherded. Because that's what we're here for. Come right now as we stand. As we sing. I heard